Well, almost 90 days ago, the Finance Minister, Jim Flaherty, announced that one of the most popular forms of investments for Canadians, income trusts, would be subject to new taxes. In addition, his actions pretty much signaled the whole industry as we know it was doomed. As a result, the market value of income trusts took a big hit, and with it the retirement savings of hundreds of thousands of people. They are still depressed, and it looks like individual investors have lost about $20 billion. Now, this is the biggest financial loss ever attributed to one government action. So I'm here this morning or this afternoon with these folks for two reasons. One, I'd like to introduce you to some of the people who have been hurt by this. The people with me today are not rich, and I think with maybe one exception, they've never been corporate executives. One man lost money he received from an insurance settlement when his wife was killed in a car crash. Another is a retired truck driver who with his wife have lost over $100,000, which they cannot make back. There's the son of two 90-year-olds whose income trust return were paying the cost of the retirement home so they could stay together. They've lost $50,000. There are people here today from Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia. Now, we all spoke for the first time over the weekend when they all came to visit me on my blog, and they've come here today of their own time and their own expense. Now, the second reason I am here, just over a year ago, I was a Conservative candidate fighting in an election. Income trusts were a big issue, and many investors, mostly seniors, were terrified they were going to be taxed. At that time, Mr. Harper said, quote, "Seniors are enraged, frightened, and panicked about potentially losing retirement savings that they count on for the essentials of daily living." And he was right. So the Conservative Party said income trusts would not be taxed. Well, now they have been. So, does the government have a moral, ethical obligation to compensate these people that were hurt? Should the Finance Minister make public why Canada and its economy were so endangered that these actions had to be taken? And what justified the breaking of a promise just 10 months after it was made? You will now hear short statements from the Canadian Retired and Income Investors Association, and then several individual investors, and finally the Canadian Association of Income Trust Investors. Following that, I'm sure some of these folks would be happy to chat with you individually if you have questions about their particular situation, and I thank you, of course, for coming. So the first person I'd like to call on, and all our statements will be very brief. First person is Alexander Irwin, who's joining us from Vancouver. Alexander.
Thank you, Garth. I'm here for two reasons. My parents are retired, and they were hit by this announcement, like this group of people behind, you see us behind us today were. They lost about $80,000 overnight. And then as we look around going forward, what can they do to replace the income that they need every month to pay their bills? We're seeing 3 to 4% GIC bond returns. It's a real problem. As I was talking with my parents and friends and family, I found that there were thousands of other people in the same situation. The second reason I'm here today is because I'm announcing the formation of the Canadian Retired and Income Investors Association. This is an organization to bring together the people who have been affected by this and to work to get something in place that is going to relieve some of the burden that's been put on by this announcement and to bring attention to the plight of people in Canada who have been affected by this.
All right, thank you. Dave Marshall. Dave is from Cornwall. And Yvonne.
Thank you very much, Mr. Turner. I'm a retired truck driver. My wife is also retired. And on Halloween, Mr. Flaherty took a sledgehammer to our portfolio. And right now we are very, very concerned about our future. Thank you.
Werner Sikora from Kingston. Werner?
Thank you, Mr. Turner. My name is Werner Sikora. I'm 62 years old. I'm a retired engineer, and I'm here to speak on behalf of my parents. 3 years ago, Mom had a stroke. She's 89 years old today. And Dad's mind has been going for quite a few years, and he's going to be 92 in February. What happened last year is that Dad's RIF ran out, and Mom's RIF is going to run out this year when she's turning 90. being responsible for their finances, and basing myself on Mr. Harper's promise not to touch income trust, I invested the money in the only vehicle that made sense, that could keep them together in their retirement home indefinitely. Now, after the Halloween debacle, there's $50,000 of their money that's less to invest, and everything safe that I've looked at for them will be yielding less than half of what they earned before. Thank you.
All right, Jeffrey Laxton. Where are you? There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I'm just here to let Canadians know that Mr. Flaherty's breaking of Prime Minister Harper's campaign election promise not to tax income trusts has hurt a lot of seniors in this country, and also a lot of average Canadian tax-paying investors in this country. And that's it.
OK, prochain, Jean-Marie Lapointe.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Jean-Marie Lapointe, je suis de Sorel-Tracy au Québec. J'ai 61 ans, je suis retraité. Je suis ici pour défendre les intérêts de ce qu'on appelle les fat cats, c'est-à-dire mes petits-enfants, ma fille, mes amis. J'ai des veuves. Chacun des dossiers qui est ici est un cas véritable que je peux vous soumettre sans rature, avec toute la documentation appropriée officielle. Donc, je suis ici pour défendre mes petits-enfants, ma fille et mes amis. Et merci beaucoup, M. Turner, de nous avoir invités à représenter le visage de vrais Canadiens, pas des fat cats. Merci.
Merci, Jean-Marie. George Murison. George?
Thanks, Garth. I'm a retired engineer from Peterborough, 68 years old, and started investing in income trusts in '93, and it seemed like a good idea until last October. I also recommended it to my daughter and my wife, and between the three of us in October, we lost $175,000. Thanks.
William Barraclough from Peterborough. Right, there he is.
Hello, my name is William Barraclough. I'm a retired teacher from Peterborough, Ontario. I had a portfolio which was invested to help with the education of my grandchildren. Sadly, a good part of that money in that portfolio came from the insurance settlement which we got after the traffic accident which took my wife's life. Well, an idiot in a speeding car took my wife from me, and now Mr. Flaherty has taken 40% of the portfolio which I wanted to help ease the life of my grandchildren. I'm pissed. I think I've got good grounds.
Thank you. Joan Gladwell.
My name is Joan Gladwell. I live in Kingston, Ontario. I'm 52 years old. I go to university part-time. I'm also a part-time communications consultant. I'm self-employed, so I don't have a company pension. So I have taken my hard-earned money that I've earned over the years and invested it. On Halloween night, with Mr. Harper's flip-flop, I lost $70,000 of that hard-earned money that I was counting on for my retirement because I believe in taking initiative and providing for my future. I'm not looking for government handouts here. So now I'm left with a quandary. What do I invest the remaining money in? GICs, government bonds, mutual funds? You know, at 3 to 4% returns, that's nothing to live on, folks. So I'd like to ask Mr. Flaherty what his suggestions might be. Thank you.
Don Francis. Don?
Thank you, Garth. I live in Ottawa. I'm a retired scientist and small businessman. My wife and I live on income from a LIF, small Canada pension plans, and our ever-decreasing savings. If these proposals become law, we're going to have to live on a lot less. Like these people here, I lost some money too. or we're going to have to get a job. We're going to invest our life outside of Canada, become a burden on the Canadian taxpayers, or maybe we're just going to have to die early, because my pension now will not take me anywhere near to 90 years old. I'm a scientist, I'm a numbers guy. I've looked at these numbers, at least the ones that aren't underneath black markers, and I don't see anything that supports the 5 points that Mr. Flaherty justified this for. In fact, I think just the reverse. My ancestors helped found the CCF, and my family have been supporting the CCF and social democracy for 67 years. It doesn't look like that's going to last any longer. Why am I so mad at them? Well, they could stop this, but they claim that they won't. I'm not surprised that the Tories put this ahead. If you know Tommy Douglas, the Tories were the fat cats. They always come after the mice. My ancestors are spinning in the grave when they see NDP fat cats pretending to be mice. They're horrified at the sheer political incompetence and inability to figure this out by the NDP. Come on, Mr. Layton and Mr. Dewar. Stop listening to the fat cats. Figure it out yourself the way I did and most of these people. Talk to your constituents. If you don't, this mouse is not going to be supporting you again to re-elect you. And my family won't either. Don't sell out your principles. Remember, fat cats got fat by eating mice, and they're already up your environmental arm, and they're getting close to your heart. Come on, Jack. Quit the spin, engage brain, and start representing the mice of this country. Thank you.
All right, and finally, Brent Fullard.
Right. My name is Brent Fullard, and I'm the president of Katie. You may have heard of us. We have been founded by 13 founding members, 8 of whom are investment managers, who collectively manage dedicated income trust portfolios, meaning just income trusts, for over 1 million Canadians. They felt the fiduciary obligation to do something. All this hardship, it turns out it's unfounded. There is no such thing as tax leakage. As I'll testify tomorrow before the public hearings, the government is basically running 2 sets of numbers, one that reflects reality and the other that justifies the policy. The only thing that they differ by is the extent to which they do or do not recognize the fact that Canadians pay retirement taxes. They just don't include it, and that's the difference between leakage and not leakage. When in fact in 2004 the second largest source of income to the government from personal income taxes is retirement taxes. It's $9 billion on $52 billion of income. How can they not acknowledge it? It's coming in the front door, but they seem to be unaware of it inside the House. And that is because people within the Department of Finance have an agenda, and ignoring these taxes serves that agenda. The only issue is, what is the agenda? Thank you.
All right, thank you all. Those are the brief statements from these individuals. If there are any questions, I'm sure directed to any of them, they'd be happy to try and answer.
Question at you. Yeah. And whoever else wants to answer. You've got lots of stories of people that lost money, but what do you do now? People have already lost their money. If the government reverses the policy, do you think that would change it? Is that what you want, or do you want compensation for money lost?
Well, there are a number of plans that have been floated as to how this particular situation could be changed. One of them, obviously, and I'll let some people talk about what they'd like, but obviously to allow people to be compensated for their losses on the income trust, perhaps between the period of the end of October, when this was introduced, and the end of the year 2006. If those losses could be deducted from taxable income, perhaps in that fiscal year or going forward a number of years, it certainly would help ease the pain a lot. Also, I think ultimately these folks would like to see this particular policy reversed. And we have hearings starting tomorrow before the House of Commons Finance Committee. It is within the power of the House of Commons Finance Committee and those members of Parliament to request changes to this legislation, to request amendments, to hold it up. They're members of Parliament. They speak for all these people here, and they have the power to make those changes. Anyone like to comment?
Can I just make a comment? The Auditor General, on her website, she has a statement that says parliamentarians need objective, fact-based information on how the government raises taxes. We have no such thing here. We have no objective or fact-based information, and yet the 5 provisions of the Notice of Ways and Means motion are all quantifiable propositions. This is not like a debate about same-sex marriage or the merits of the initiative in Afghanistan. These are quantifiable propositions. And those who have done the work to actually challenge these quantifiable propositions have an abundance of work and studies that demonstrate none of them hold. So why are we doing this? There is no foundation. We need to go back to the source document. We have to understand it. And if, in fact, they don't hold up to the light of day, then this policy should be repudiated. And if there are...
lie to break a campaign promise. Doesn't
I
make
didn't
sense
say
to
that.
me.
I
Okay,
didn't
well,
say that.
cover something up then. Like, why are
I didn't
you...
say that either. I'm just saying to you that they have two realities. One is I call it the parallel universe that they run. They, I guess, have some form of contempt for the fact that people have retirement plans. I can't explain it, but I'll tell you.
Let's,
Okay.
let's hear from another one of these folks. Yeah.
That's a good question, and I'd like to make a comment on it, because looking at what the future holds is really key to this question. I have some materials associated with the launch of our new association where we've looked out in the future. We've looked at the people who will be retired, what their options are to get that income that they need to pay their bills month to month. And what we see is difficulty and troubles. People are not going to be able to make ends meet. We urge the government to look at that big picture and to think about modest income people who will be put in this position. We think a higher yielding option than bonds and GICs is a must for the future. And we've done the research to back that up. So to answer your question, we would like to get to the bottom of this, to know what the real facts are, and then decide what makes sense going forward, realizing that there's a large group of people who are going to be retired and who depend on income investments to pay their bills each and every month.
You speak French? Oui. Those two gentlemen are too generous. What they don't say is that Flaherty is lying. He's lying in such a way that you journalists, you are following him, because what he says in a business sense is nonsense at all. He say income trusts don't pay taxes. I say, hey man, I pay taxes. My daughter pay taxes. It's just like saying you go in Ottawa, you find a Canadian Tire, a store, Canadian Tire. Owners are 5 individuals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are the owners. We don't have the corporation status. On opère en partenariat. Un partenariat, partnership, flow-through entities, income trust. It's all the same thing. Ça s'opère de la même façon. We get the profits first, taxable. Then, cash flow is the key. You never hear that word, cash flow. Some say we get more money than income. The entity is doing. A trust is doing money. We have to get it first. That's the law. The income tax law, tax code.
Well, I guess I can just...
Just let him finish. Just finish.
Yes. Le taxe canadien des impôts prévoit que les trusts doivent payer en premier à leurs détenteurs d'unités les profits réalisés. S'ils ne le font pas, la fiducie, le trust, va hériter de l'impôt maximum. Donc, on paye, nous, les impôts. Les trusts ne payent pas d'impôts, pas plus que le Canadien Tire, il y a des investisseurs privés. Après ça, vient la distribution basée sur les cash flows. Cash flow, c'est des dépenses fiscales qui n'entraînent pas les sorties d'argent, dépréciation, déplétion dans le cas du pétrole. Un baril de pétrole qui est sorti de la terre, vendu, entre les deux, il y a un profit, et quand le baril est sorti, il nous revient. Ça, c'est sans impôt. Return of capital. Des mots dramatiques. Dirty words. Return of capitals. La confusion vient qu'il y a plus de la moitié. Oh, puis je suis généreux encore, je ne serai pas comme eux autres. 90%, 90% of members of this parliament don't even know what they talk about. Ask Mr. Judy, I don't know her name. Diane, sitting on the committee for the Conservatives, she don't have a clue what she's talking about. Ask her if she has read all the reports. I know that she's asking for others to have a briefing on the report, and she will vote for the future of my grandchildren, my daughter and me? No way. They don't know what they are talking about. They are liars.
Just to pick up on that point, if I could.
Well, just maybe some other questions here.
Lying or confusing the issue, or whatever you want to describe it, they have managed to get many Canadians on their side who believe the story that if these corporations don't pay tax or the income trusts don't pay tax, then it's going to be the middle income people that have to pick it up. How are you going to fight that?
With reality, with facts.
Well, Richard, in reality, most income trust investors' demographics will show you are middle-class taxpayers. And by having removed $20 billion in the retirement savings of those folks, that's a black hole in the middle of the retirement of a lot of people. And some of those people may, in fact, be looking to the government for recouping that in the future. Who knows? But you can't sort of eradicate wealth without a reaction. And I think that you'll hear adequate testimony before the Finance Committee tomorrow and the next day. I really hope you have a look at it. You'll see a lot of cogent arguments there as to why this income is not taxation that's being avoided by large corporations. And in fact, when large corporations pay individuals cash flow through income trust, individuals end up being taxed on it themselves.
Pointed out here that how do you want them compensated? I still don't understand that. You said, some kind of tax break or something for their lost income. They've lost the money now. It's not coming back. Is that correct?
The money's not coming back unless it can be deducted from taxable income. These people have suffered real capital losses, and the capital losses are directly attributable to a change in the risk environment. And the risk environment changed because the Government of Canada changed its mind and introduced a tax measure overnight that the market had no idea was going to happen. It was like a giant global event that took place that would depress the markets. Well, this was a deliberate government activity. And because it was a deliberate government activity that depressed the market and hurt these people's savings, they are saying, is it not reasonable that you'd reverse that or extend the period of implementation or mollify it in some way or allow us to write those losses off our own taxable income going forward? There are a number of alternatives out there that definitely have been discussed. I think the key message right now, as the House of Commons Finance Committee starts its deliberations tomorrow, they have the ability to ask these questions, to examine it from an expert point of view, to amend this legislation from its draconian state that it's in now, and come up with some options. I think that's what everyone is saying. Comment? Bill?
Stay there for a second, Garth. The estimates are $20 billion, as you know, in market losses.
Yeah.
Is it realistic to expect the government's going to go ahead with the policy and, as the cost of that, providing a $20 billion tax break? Or are you really saying you have to roll it back, you have to change the policy?
That might be highly unrealistic and highly unaffordable. One doesn't know. But that's all I'm saying. I really hope my colleagues on the House of Commons Finance Committee look at the options. How can we somewhat help these average Canadians who got torpedoed through no fault of their own? Is there not some way that the government can achieve its objectives without destroying theirs? Bill?
I just wanted to point out that it would be quite helpful to get some kind of help for our losses. But perhaps the most important thing first would be to get this cloud taken out from over the whole area of income trusts. It's a legitimate business organization, and until we get this cloud off of our heads, nobody's going to accept that. If they are recognized as being a legitimate business organization again, then the people who are retired and near retirement can get the reasonable cash flow which they need to fund their retirements. And that's the important thing. If you're retired, capital gains are secondary. You need cash flow. You need it every month. I mean, day trading for your golden years is not really a very good concept. So let's get the income trusts out from under the cloud, accept them as legitimate, and then we'll talk about compensation after that, which is important, but I need a monthly cash flow.
That was our association.
Okay, I would like to make a comment, and I I'm sorry I forgot your name,
Brent.
but Brent. Brent made a very important point, and that is that the numbers that both the government and the NDP are basing themselves on first saw the light of day in a background paper in September of 2005. And I would invite you all to study that paper, where it expressly states that that money that is invested in RRSPs and RIFs, okay, is considered to be non-taxable. And therefore, they have declared that to be a total loss. And if the government believes this, okay, if Mr. Mintz, who has written extensively on that, hasn't challenged this, okay? Brent, I think you may have something to add to this.
Yeah, I think I can make this simple for everyone, and that is that last year, under the, I call it Goodale round, they actually engaged in public consultation. And there was an outside date where people could make submissions. And an awful lot of work was done because there were a number of unresolved issues about the competitive nature of income trusts and, more importantly, tax leakage. And so I'll make this simple. I mean, there was work done. It never got tabled. Here it is here. It's a study by HLB Decision Economics. They do all sorts of work for the Government of Canada. They are the only people who actually went into finance, sat down with them, compared methodology, compared assumptions. They could replicate each other's work. But it became abundantly clear to HLB at the time the government does not include these taxes. And it's that simple and it's that wrong. There's 31% of trusts held in RSPs. And like I tell my children, if they aren't, you know, the grade they get in their final exam isn't acknowledged by the teacher, they'll probably fail. But if it were included, they'd be at the top of the class. And income trusts are the top of the class, and the analysis that is the foundation for this policy is incorrect.
All right, thank you. I'm sure if there's anyone...
Was there a motivation to raise taxes rather than save the tax base that they had? I'm not quite clear on that.
I think the government's motivation, income trusts are forms of corporations that pass through the profits. Instead of paying tax on the profits as a corporation, it passes them through to investors like these, and these folks then pay taxes on them through their own hands. That's what an income trust is. The amount of tax that these folks will pay will be slightly lower than a corporation because many of them are retired. And also it may be a little bit longer getting to the government because they may shelter it inside of RSPs or RIFs. So by making the change the government did, they're increasing their government revenues somewhat and they're bringing them in somewhat faster. That appears to be the motivation of the government. In other words, it's a tax increase. That's exactly what this was. It's a tax increase. And it's a tax increase that is very targeted on the retirement savings of a lot of people who the Prime Minister said would not be taxed.
Twice on this. First, if this goes through, the corporation's going to get taxed at the corporate level, and then the RSP person, when they take their money out, they'll get taxed again. So it's really unfair in that respect.
Anyway.
Just one little statistic that people should recognize. Sorry. Corporations on average pay not the statutory rates of taxation, which is 25%. They pay 6.3%, and that's according to Statistics Canada. So the efficiency of raising taxes through the corporate model isn't what people would lead you to believe.
Complicated issue, but what we try to do is to show you here that it actually impacts real people, and I'm sure anyone would be happy to chat with you again. Thank you all very much for your attention. I truly appreciate it. Right. Okay, so we're going to get all our coats. We're going to go upstairs.
Yep. Did you get the sheet?